The Ascendants have made optimization emotional. That's what they've done. They've made it really different. And I think when we think about the emotions and the sentiments that are going to be shaping what consumers want, one of the consumer emotions we identified that this consumer is aligned with is flourishing. Instantly, when you start thinking about, I want products that are going to help me flourish, you get it. And I think that's how they're going to look at brands. You know, how can you help me progress? How can you help me flourish? How can you help me grow?
So this is Clare Varga, Vice President of Consumer Insight at WGSN. As you probably know, at WGSN, every year we publish our Future Consumer Forecast, one of our most eagerly anticipated forecasts. This year is no different. We are currently 3 out of 4 podcasts into discussing the 4 major cohorts that are going to be important across all industries come 2028. And today we're going to be talking all about the Ascendants. And to help me with that, I've got Clare, who runs our Consumer Insight division. Thank you for coming on the podcast again.
No, I love it. It's like I say, it's any time I get to see you, and this time it's in person.
This time it's in person. This time it's person. Okay, so let's dive straight in. Tell me, who are the Ascendants? What do we need to know about them, and why are they important in 2028?
The Ascendants they're all about progress with play.
Progress with play.
Progress with play. They are very joyful optimizers. They're very curious. They're very energized by discovery.
Okay.
Now, when we talk about the Ascendants within the other 4 personas, they're always seen as the slightly techie one.
Okay.
And I think it would be really, really easy to sort of stereotype this particular consumer as that sort of Brian Johnson-esque tech bro.
Oh, really? Okay.
I want to live forever type person. They are not that at all.
Okay.
They're much more about, they don't want to live forever. They just want to live better. And it's not that they want to change the future or they're in denial about the future. They just they're in training for the future. You know, that it's about resilience. It's not about perfection. It's not about living forever. So they are early adopters. You know, they are, as I say, they're very curious, and just finding something new is really what sort of drives them. Yes, tech comes into it, but it can be something that's just beautifully designed and might have used tech in the process. It's not all about digital things, but really they're just optimizing their lives. Optimization is probably the key word I would associate with this one.
So we can't get through a podcast at the moment without talking about AI. In fact, I don't think I get through a day at the moment without talking about AI in some capacity. Is this the cohort that are more open to how AI might benefit them?
Yeah, absolutely. To them, AI is not a tool. AI is infrastructure.
Okay.
It's just part of their life.
So they'll be using it already.
Yes, absolutely. You know, and they're using it in terms of discovery. So how they're shopping, it's changing how they're discovering things. They're using it as search engines. I think, you know, we're looking at the way consumers are discovering products anymore. You know, I think around 70% of sort of younger consumers are now switching to Gen AI to discover products. You know, they're not going and saying what's trending. You know, they're going to look for sort of the Gen AI to sort of, you know, aggregate everything that the search engine is doing. They're not going and saying, oh, you know, what product's trending. They're saying, what's the product that's going to optimize me? This is where I'm going. What's going to be best for me? So
that's some kind of interesting avenue to explore for a moment. Is this the group, therefore, that are going to be less swayed by what influencers or content creators might be suggesting? And are they being more thoughtful about the investigation or the research that they do into products before just taking a recommendation?
They are. And I think one thing that I didn't mention about the Ascendants is they're making optimization emotional. Okay, so they do look at recommendations, they do look at performance, because they want performance, they want progress, they want evolution, but they're not as much as necessarily swayed by an influencer and the likes. They do want to have a connection with it. It's not newness for the sake of newness. It's not innovation for the sake of innovation. They're looking for small wins as much as big wins, you know. So they are influenced by, you know, influencers, but they're as more likely to look on something like Reddit and get that sort of group feel about things as well.
Yeah.
So
I mean, just look at, I mean, looking, I saw some data stats, which I'm not going to remember now, unfortunately. I don't have them on my cue card, but about, you know, the increase in usage in Reddit over the past few years. Now, we were tracking this a couple of years ago, but it's really accelerated recently. And I find that quite fascinating in a world where we think so much about the visual and, you know, beautiful imagery that might sway us to make a decision. And yet these are people who are going down, you know, not beautifully designed threads of data and words to discover new things or to do their research.
And they're often very human problems that are solving, you know, they're very everyday things. Like I say, they're not looking to, you know, find the fountain of youth things. That sometimes it's just like, you know, what's the best supplement that's going to get me through the next day? Or, you know.
Which you and I have been swapping tips on.
We have. So, you know, and they're just, you know, and I say that's what I mean about being very human, very empathetic. They're looking for real solutions to real problems.
Solutions, real problems. Okay, I really like that. Now, question always has to come up at some stage. Does this group skew towards any particular age group?
No, and I think this is an interesting, and again, you would tend to think it was. And I think, you know, this is where the way we approach our personas really comes into its fore, because we're not looking at a demographic. An ascendant can be 25 or 55. And I think, you know, if you're looking at them purely from an age point of view,
you're going to
miss them. You're going to miss them. If you're designing products for the ascendants that are building agency, giving them control, you've got them. So, you know, that you are seeing it at all ages. And I think it's because that there is, you know, they're very small problems, and we all just feature, you know, we're all dealing with these problems day to day. So
what have been the drivers then? Where have the ascendants come from?
I think, you know, there's always been a sort of an ascendant consumer around. There's always been the early adopter. There's always been that very aspirational consumer. But at the moment, I think, you know, is the state of the world. At the moment, you know, the ascendants, they're looking for control. They're looking for agency. Now, they can't control the climate. They can't control the geopolitical landscape. But what they can control is their biology,
their life,
their energy, and also their learning. And that's their drivers. It really is about agency and preparing themselves. You know, talking to somebody about them the other day, and I said, you know, it's not vanity. It's not even, you know, they just want to be the first. It's about resilience. You know, that's what this optimization comes from. And that's why I like to make the difference about they're not that sort of tech bro. You know, it's about resilience and training for life.
Yeah. So it's taking control in a world that feels very out of control at the moment, and then maybe positioning themselves for a positive future in whatever aspect that might mean to them. Which industries should be really focused and preparing themselves for the ascendants?
Pretty much all industries. You know, this is touching everything. And you know, we're already seeing those early signals of industries talking to this consumer. Beauty, wellness is a sort of a given almost. Food and drink, you know, as well. Some of the things that are happening around food. The other thing I really need to stress about this particular persona is they're really playful. They're
fun as well.
They enjoy tech, and I guess in a way they are, you know, I said they're purpose with play. They're quite joyful. They almost gamify everything.
This is quite nice, because some of the other cohorts are less playful and more serious and more concerned about the world.
Yeah.
Feels like this one's using a sort of positive path to navigate through it.
Yeah.
Are these the kidults then? Is there a sort of kidult aspect to these?
I think possibly. You know, I think one of the examples that stood out was from our sports and outdoor team, and you will like this as well, because it's about an exercise bike, a really new gen exercise bike, and I know you love that. But this one is sort of like they've sort of gamified the participation in that as you progress, you unlock features on the bike. So it changes it. So, and I think, you know,
I do like that.
That's another way to engage with them. You know, I think they want to be part of an ecosystem as
Yeah.
well. They want to sort of participate. They're not really going to be that sort of person who's going to collect points on their card and perks. They're not really into that. But if you can, if you can link their progress to something that's sort of fun as well, and that's when you really get them. But they are very playful. And I think, again, the food and drink team talked about, I think it was Shake Shack had worked with an AI company to sort of create, I think it was a custard or an ice cream that was egg-free, dairy-free, but still had the exact texture. And this idea that that they're going to go for that. They make eating sort of an ice cream or something, or a cake that's been formulated so it's perfectly balanced. They're actually making that into sort of a biohacking sort of improvement thing.
Yeah.
And I love
But they
that
still want
about-
cake or ice cream.
We still want cake or ice cream.
Okay. All right. So this is not the kind of maniacal longevity journey that they're on.
No,
Okay.
absolutely not.
What, as brands are thinking about meeting the Ascendant as this group is kind of emerging quite strongly as we look to future years, what are the things that they should be prioritizing?
I think when you look at them, one of the first things I would say is like sort of audit your temperature, as in, are you warm? Are you,
Okay, so
how are you connecting?
No, your actual physical temperature.
How they want emotional connection. So if your tech is a bit mechanical, if your service is just a bit dry, they just won't connect with it. Whether it's your algorithm or just how you interact with people, they want that. We've already talked about performance. They want high performance to be emotional and warm and connected. So you've got to have that if to connect with this consumer. That's something I would absolutely prioritize.
Okay, little pause, quick fire questions. You've done these quite a few times now. You should be really, really good at it. Okay. This is a new one for this. Which consumer persona do you align with most?
Do you know, I am an ascendant.
You're an ascendant.
I'm an ascendant with a bit of restorer rising.
Okay.
I think to be a forecaster, you have to have.
You've got to have some
You've got to
positivity.
have
We always
a
talk
lot of
about
it.
that.
But and I think it is very a work thing. But I am the person. Even when I'm going around the supermarket, I'm trying to do it in the most efficient way.
Yeah.
I am absolutely an ascendant.
Okay.
And I did actually download an app last week to try and decide if I needed to get bangs or not. I am an ascendant, I'm so like
See,
that.
I'm being served lots of those ads on Instagram at the moment. And as someone who doesn't cut her hair very often, I think twice in the last 6 years, because I just don't really find the time to do it. I was like, maybe it's time for a fringe.
Well, it wasn't time for a fringe, I can tell you, having seen it. But then, I just talked about the fact that, Ascendant's quite playful as well.
Yeah.
And then spent another half hour seeing what I look like with every hairstyle, every hair colour under the sun.
What was
Loved
the conclusion you came to?
that I am just an angular bob person and I should stop messing around with my hair.
Stick with what you know. Stick with what you know. Okay. Which is the book you're recommending most at the moment?
Do you know, I'm terrible. I don't read a lot of books. And again, this is why I'm ascendant. I listen to books.
Okay.
I use my commute and my bedtime.
Yeah.
I'd love to say it was something very weighty and meaningful.
I love a trashy book.
I tend to read a lot of history.
Okay.
History novels and things. I think looking, again, I think it's a forecaster.
Yeah.
Understanding what went before. So I do look at a lot of stuff like that. Currently, I'm machining my way through McHerron and the Slow Horses
Really?
books. Excellent. Highly
Ooh.
recommend those.
Okay. That's good to know. Favorite AI tool?
Well, it's got to be the hair app, hasn't it? Now it has to be the hair app. No, I mean any assistant that makes complexity easy, anything that like augments my thinking but doesn't replace it is I'm drawn to. But
Augmenting
also
thinking.
the hair app, definitely.
What's the song you've currently got on repeat?
At the moment, I'm having a bit of a retro Depeche Mode. Personal
You're definitely
Jesus.
the first person who said that with that question.
And then my son has got me into a alt K-pop band called Barman Tiger, who are this sort of collective, and they're just joyous. And I highly recommend a song called Big Butt if you just need to dance around. It's not rude or anything.
Okay.
It's just joyous.
All right, Big Butt, K-pop,
Barming Tiger.
Right, okay. I might try that on the way home. What was the last thing you ticked off your bucket list?
I don't have a bucket list, and I don't think I believe in them. I think they just feel very definitive, and I do have a lot of to-do
It doesn't really
lists
fit with the
anyway.
Ascendant
And I was
profile,
going to
does
say,
it?
actually,
Yeah.
if I'm an
You're not planning
Ascendant,
for the end.
I'm
You're,
going to around forever, so I won't need to tick anything off, will I? No.
Okay, all right. So let's think about the future. If you were in design or marketing right now, or even kind of in innovation, what would you, or how should you be thinking about the Ascendant consumer?
It's how you can humanize and bring warmth to technology and progress and evolution.
So on that, is this let's take, there's a lot of discussion at the moment, not new, we've been having this for a while, about, say, AI imagery as an example. Is this a group that will accept AI imagery in marketing campaigns if it feels like it has some warmth to it, or would they be put off by that?
Yeah, I think they will accept it, but it's got to connect with them. It's got to be the right sort of imagery. It's got to have the right sort of feel about it. I
They
think
still want humans in the images.
absolutely, and they still want humans in everything. It's not an either or for them. I think they similar to how I think about it. They want, it doesn't have to be a technical digital AI product. There might be it might be a product that's formulated using AI or enhanced using AI, but the actual product might be something quite analog, quite basic. And again, they just think of it as infrastructure. It's just I don't even think they have to sort of
No, think
make the
about it. No,
distinction.
it's just the world
It's
that they
just
live in.
there, and they've
Yeah.
accepted it, and they just sort of moved on
Okay.
from it.
How does kind of family and community fit in with this group?
Even though the Ascendant is very quite aspirational and they like to feel special, they're not gatekeepers actually. So they'll share everything. They want to share all their discoveries. And they, again, back to that sort of idea that, I'd be saying to business as well, rethink about your sort of loyalty systems. They want things like closed community. They want invites. They want products in beta, phases.
Yeah.
Glow Recipe, who are a really interesting beauty brand, like last year, they did some amazing activations where they actually just sent out to some of their key community people just little bottles of their latest serum that were labeled as lab samples, and they just sent them out. Nobody knew they were coming. The imprints and reach that it had was absolutely amazing, and that was because everyone was just sharing it. So they do want that sort of community. Like I say, they're not gatekeepers. Once they've found a solution for something, they want to share it. So they're gonna, they're like, you've got to have this supplement, you've got to do that, you've got to do that. So
yeah, you definitely fit in that category.
yeah, I am.
Do they need things to be beautiful? Is perfection part of this?
Yeah, they do like things that are beautifully designed.
Okay.
It is a form and function are still very important to them. They do want to see, the same way they want to see sort of progress, micro progress and evolution. They do want to see things that are beautifully designed. And I think we talked a lot about design to disappear. When you think about their home, there's some beautiful sort of counters or bedside tables that, if you can imagine, that they're wireless charging points, but you don't know them. They're sort of designed for the future. You can just put any device down and it will charge. So how they live, they want things that are integrated. Even when you look at some of the sports equipment and the home equipment that they're using, dumbbells that are just absolutely beautiful.
I know.
But
they're so expensive. I want some really beautiful dumbbells.
They do. They're
You've seen
nice.
the new Zara home ones?
I have, absolutely, that whole collection.
Yeah, gorgeous.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I know. I've been told categorically I'm not allowed to get rid of the weights we've got at home and replace them with Zara home ones.
But I can also imagine, some of the stuff that's happening around travel as well. I think that's where you are seeing some of the really interesting tech coming through. There's a brand called Harman who have created this in-car. It's like an AI avatar, and it's designed to be very warm and very human. It will pick up on your voice cues, your body, and then it will try and adapt the environment of the car so that you feel, you're optimized for driving. But I think when I was looking at the Ascendants, they are professionals, they are parents, they are athletes, they are people in midlife that, so they're very different. And there was one particular product that I really liked, which again, the sports and outdoor team, which was a little trike for a 2-year-old. And it was like a self-balancing trike. So it basically helped with motor skills. And, so an ascendant parent, they're already optimizing their children before they can even, tie their shoelaces.
The children are being optimized as well as the...
It's just part of the infrastructure of life.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the kind of longevity theme. I don't think you can call it a trend. It's more of a movement, because you're saying that this group are not the ones who are like biohacking everything and living sort of curtailed lives because they want to live longer. But I imagine that this is a movement that crosses over quite a lot with the Ascendants.
Absolutely.
What are you and your team forecasting at the moment as we look 2 years ahead or 2 years out in that space that's of interest? It's like a personal question as much as anything else.
Yeah. I mean, actually, this is where a lot of the bioengineering stuff is happening. And, in beauty and wellness, you're seeing a lot more products that are, working at a cellular level. And that's definitely where we're seeing that going. And, actually taking charge of your biology, whether that's through what you're eating or how you're working out. That's definitely where we're seeing, that sort of longevity conversation going. And I think it's not necessarily about living longer. We talked a lot about health spans rather than lifespans.
Yeah.
It's about trying to stay as healthy as long as you can, so that, when you do finally get to retire, you can enjoy
that
your health
time
and enjoy your age. And again, it's resilience. It's about resilience. It's about being sort of future fit.
Okay. So we talked about what's important when this cohort sort of emerges. They're beginning to emerge already, but when we feel that there's more kind of a mass who are behaving this way. But what's the one thing you would tell brands to do right now to be prepared for? Is it about product? Sounds like it might be about product, or...
It's not. It's the emotion side of things with it, because you can design the most amazing product, but if people don't connect with it, they're not going to do it. So the Ascendants have made optimization emotional. That's what they've done. They made it really different. And I think when we think about the emotions and the sentiments that are going to be shaping what consumers want, one of the consumer emotions we identified that this consumer is aligned with is flourishing.
Okay.
The idea, I know it's so positive, and I think instantly when you start thinking about, I want products that are going to help me flourish, you get it. And I think that's how they're going to look at brands. How can you help me progress? How can you help me flourish? How can you help me grow? And that's, I think it's such a positive
really
emotion.
nice way of thinking about it.
And I think in the world at the moment, flourishing is hard. It's hard to find those sort of green shoots of where you can grow yourself. So it's thinking about how you can help people flourish.
That's a really nice one. I probably know the answer given sort of where we're going with this, because we've always got to ask it. But with all of that said, do you feel more hopeful? Or as an ascendant, would you feel more positive or anxious about the future?
I am absolutely optimistic and positive. Again, as a forecaster and an ascendant. You have to be.
Yeah.
But no, I am. And, when I look at the innovations that are out there, the way we are problem solving, actually that people are looking to each other much more, and that we have words like flourishing coming through. I think I'm very optimistic at heart.
So Clare Varga's optimistic and the Ascendants are optimistic. It is, I think there's something lovely about, as I said, we're kind of, we're 3 of the 4 major cohorts through in this sort of mini series within the podcast. And, there's a lot of anxiety out there, which you're seeing coming out in these particular consumer groups. And it feels that this one, the anxiety is there. The world is the same that they're living in, but they're charting a more positive future.
They're absolutely not in denial about it. They are, actively, again, it's a form of resistance as well, isn't it? It's resilience and it's resistance. It's like, this is what I can control. This is what I can take care of.
Yeah. Do you have any case studies in terms of the playful aspect? Are there any brands that are doing that really well at the moment?
I think
or do you think that's the opportunity?
I think there's probably more opportunity for more playful products and services. I mean, playful and joy as well. I mean, the food stuff is really interesting. Even in supplements, there's some really interesting things sort of coming through. There's I think they're a brand out of Singapore, and they do performance gummies like creatine gummies. I think they're called Foul Play. And their gummies are pink. They're actually targeted at men, but they've decided to sort of have this very different brand identity, and their tagline is, performance you can taste. But again, there's sort of the ice creams coming through. Food is I think some of the stuff that's happening in sort of food and drink is really, really interesting.
Yes, I think that's a fascinating industry at the moment because there's a lot of innovation happening, cool things that aren't about sort of taking away. They're not about denying yourself.
No.
This group, that sounds right on
Absolutely,
message.
Definitely.
Yeah. And thank you all for tuning in. So as I said already, we are 3 of our 4 future consumer profiles in this mini-series. I'll be back in 2 weeks' time with the last future consumer forecast for 2028. Thank you to Clare for being on the podcast again. Thank you all for listening. I'm Carla Buzasi, CEO of WGSN, and I'll see you next time.